Year 3. Welcome to your writing lesson for Wednesday the 3rd of March. You will need your purple book and your pencil for today, so make sure you've got everything ready. Right, let's start with a warm-up. So today's warm-up is match the antonyms. That's a funny word, isn't it? Let's say that again, antonyms. And all that mean is the opposite. So in our warm-ups and in our videos, we've been talking about synonyms, and we've completed, it was a long time ago now, some synonym roles. Now synonyms mean the same. So if I might have the word big and you find a synonym huge, enormous, gigantic. So synonym is the exact same or almost the same meaning, but it's a different word. Antonym means the opposite then. Okay, so let's start with the first one and do it together. So I've got some words down this column and I've got some other words, and what you've got to do is you've got to write them in your purple book like they are on the board, and you've got to draw a line to match the antonym, which means the opposite. So I've got the words big, soft, short, smooth, so big, soft, short, smooth. I've got hard, tall, small, rough. Okay, so what's the opposite of big? Well done. If you know, the opposite of big is small. So you draw a line. The opposite of big is small. Okay, the next one, you've got soft. What's the opposite of soft? It could be hard, tall, or rough. Okay, there's perhaps two you're struggling between, but one of them's a lot more obvious. Okay, and then you've got short. So what's the opposite of short? Is it going to be hard, tall, or rough? So the opposite of short. And then the opposite of smooth. Okay, I'm sure you can match those antonyms up really well. So remember, antonyms means the opposite. Okay, so pause the video now to do your warm-up. Right then, for the next 3 days, so today, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, we're going to be having a look at this story by Roald Dahl. And you might have read some of it before. It's called The Twit, and it's one of my favourite Roald Dahl stories. Okay, our learning question today says, can I apply my phonic knowledge to label and describe Mr. Twit's beard? So Mr. Twit is one of the main characters in The Twits. Okay, so let's read some of the story to get us started, and I'll explain today's task. So make sure you've got your listening ears ready. We're not going to read too much, but you need to have good listening. Okay, so before I start, I will show you an illustration. And the illustrations are by Quentin Blake. Okay, who always tends to work with Roald Dahl. And the first chapter is called Hairy Faces. What a lot of hairy-faced men there are around nowadays. When a man grows hair all over his face, it is impossible to tell what he really looks like. Perhaps that's why he does it. He'd rather you didn't know. Then there's the problem of washing. When the very hairy ones wash their faces, it must be as big as a job as when you and I wash the hair on our heads. So what I want to know is this. How often do all these hairy-faced men wash their faces? Is it only once a week, like us on Sunday nights? I think I wash my face more than once a week, do you? And do they shampoo it? Do they use a hairdryer? Do they rub hair tonic in it to stop their faces from going bald? Do they go to the barber to have their hairy faces cut and trimmed? Or do they do it themselves in front of the bathroom mirror with nail scissors? I don't know. But next time you see a man with a hairy face, which will probably be as soon as you step out onto the street, maybe you will look at him more closely and start wondering about some of these things. And then we get introduced to Mr. Twit, and there's a picture of him, an illustration. Mr. Twit was one of these very hairy-faced men. The whole of his face, except for his forehead, his eyes and his nose, was covered with thick hair. The stuff even sprouted in revolting tufts out of his nostrils and ear holes. Ooh. Mr. Twit felt that his hairiness made him look terrifically wise and grand, but in truth, he was neither of these things. Mr. Twit was a twit. He was born a twit, and now, at the age of 60, he was a bigger twit than ever. The hair on Mr. Twit's face didn't grow smooth and matted as it does on most hairy-faced men. It grew in spikes that stuck out straight like the bristles of a nail brush. And how often did Mr. Twit wash this bristly nail brushy face of his? The answer is never. Not even on Sundays. He hadn't washed it for years. And the next chapter, and I think I know why it's called this, is called Dirty Beards. As you know, an ordinary unhairy face like yours or mine simply gets a bit smudgy if it's not washed often enough, and there's nothing so awful about that. But a hairy face is a different matter. Things cling to hairs, especially food. Things like gravy go right in among the hairs and stay there. You and I can wipe our smooth faces with a flannel and we quickly look more or less all right again. But the hairy man cannot do that. We can also, if we are careful, eat our meals without spreading food all over our faces. But not so the hairy man. Watch carefully next time you see a hairy man eating his lunch, and you will notice that even if he opens his mouth very wide, it is impossible for him to get a spoonful of beef stew or ice cream and chocolate sauce into it without leaving some of it on the hairs. Mr. Twit didn't bother to open his mouth wide when he ate. As a result, and because he never washed, there were always hundreds of bits of old breakfasts and lunches and suppers sticking to the hairs around his face. There weren't big bits, mind you, because he used to wipe those off with the back of his hand or on his sleeve while he was eating. But if you look closely, not that you'd ever want to, you would see tiny little specks of dried up scrambled eggs stuck to the hairs, and spinach and tomato ketchup and fish fingers and minced chicken livers and all other disgusting things Mr. Twit liked to eat. And I'll show you the pictures. That sounds disgusting, doesn't it? Okay, I'm going to leave it there in the story, and we're going to have a little think about our task today. So, our task is to draw Mr. Twit's beard in our purple books, okay? And then it says, use your imagination to label it with revolting items, so all of the foods that Mr. Twit might be eating, and describe it with adjectives. So remember, adjectives are describing words. So you've got to draw Mr. Twit's beard, and then you've got to label it with all of the foods you might find there, and some describing words as well. Before we go on to that, and I'm going to do an example with you, let's recap some of our phonic sounds that will help us with our spelling today, because our learning objective is to apply our phonic sounds to label Mr. Twit's beard. So, let's look at the phase 3 sounds, and I'll zoom in. Now, we're not going to do the top sounds because they're the easy ones. We know our j and our v and so on. So we're going to start from the ch for chick. So we've got ch. Now, I'd like you to say the sound out loud and I will say it after. So let's practice. I'm going to point there and you'll say and I'll say ch. We got it? Let's go. So say it out loud. Sh. Th. Ng. A. E. I. O. Oo. We've got that twice. Oo. Okay, so I'm giving you time to say it out loud, so make sure you're joining in with me. Okay, so you say it. I'll say it. Ah. Or. Ow. Oi. Ear. Air. Your. Okay, I'm sure you did great with them. Let's move on to phase 5. Okay, now I'm going to read them to you so we can go a bit quicker. Okay, we've got A, ow, I, E, oi, oo, or, w, f, oo, as in oo for screw. We sometimes struggle with that one. We've got O for toe, or as in haunted house, E for key, A, split diagraph, so A for cake, E, I, O, U. Okay, so I'm going to zoom back out, and if you struggle with your spelling today, you can come back to this part of the video and pause it so you can see all of the phonic sounds that will help you with your spelling. Okay, so here I've got a beard. Now I'm sure in your purple book you can draw a really good one, and on your beard I'd like to see pictures of the revolting items, all of those foods you can see in his beard. Okay, so we've got items, and then we've got adjectives, and remember adjectives are describing words. So let's think then of some foods, some items that could be found in Mr. Twit's beard. Now we know Mr. Twit's beard is pretty gross, so we want stinky, smelly food. So I'm going to start off with tuna. Okay, so tuna. Ooh, what else could be in his beard? I hope you're joining in and saying some items. It could be eggs. Oh, they could be rotten, couldn't they? So rotten is a describing word, and I could describe the eggs as rotten. So I'm going to put this side, so it could be rotten. Rotten. Okay, so I've got tuna, eggs. What other food types could we add? We could have beans. We could have milk, because it would go off, wouldn't it? It'd go mouldy and off. And sour. Ooh, there's some describing words, some adjectives there. So we've got mouldy. We've got sour. Oh, so there we go, that's better. Sour. Okay, so we've got tuna, eggs, beans, milk. Ooh, let's think of one more. So we've got at least 5 items. So tuna, eggs, beans, milk. Can you think of one more? Mine's going to be cheese. Now, I'm sure you can come up with some more creative ideas than me. Okay, now let's make sure we've got 5 adjectives. So rotten, mouldy, sour. So we want describing words. While looking at his beard and thinking about the story, it said about how bushy and thick it was. So we could have bushy. He's got a bushy beard. He's got a thick beard. So thick. Okay. Now, we know it's disgusting, so we can write that word down. Disgusting. So you can have more than 5. It would be amazing if your page could be full. Horrid. Revolting, sickening, gross, repulsive. Okay, there are lots of adjectives you could put to describe his beard. So that's your task for today. So you're going to draw a picture of Mr. Twit's beard in your purple book. You're going to list me some items that might be found in his beard, and you're going to write me some describing words. I can't wait to see all of your creative ideas. See you tomorrow.